I would like to present you a blissful uncertainty related to my life. And my question is, does uncertainty have multiple faces? Uncertainty has been with me so far in my life. I was born in Kosovo in an area which was ruled by an unofficial war for decades. I always felt afraid as a native. My way to school and my school hours were certainly not boring. I once witnessed a small boy who was beaten by police to death because he sold cigarettes. I was 6 years old and stood watching by the street. I was on my way to school when two police officers stopped. One of the police officers held a gun on my head and the other one convinced him to let me live because I was blonde, and this was a rare incident in Kosovo. The Serbian government wanted to prevent Albanian people from receiving education. Children were instead exposed to gas during school hours. As you can see, the situation in Kosovo became worse and worse. So in 1994, my parents decided to take us 3 kids and to flee to Germany illegally. This decision was very difficult for my parents because they had to leave everything behind and it was uncertain if we would even get into Germany. The whole situation was uncertain and far from blissful. Growing up in Kosovo, there were many hardships, but also many fundamental virtues which will stay with me forever. We arrived in Germany without a home, with no idea of what the future will bring us and what we can expect. While alone in the dark, I saw a light in the end of the tunnel, and that was Germany, who gave us a helping hand. I was 10 years old. I began school without knowing a word of German. When for the first time I met a police officer in Germany, I reacted intuitively with fear and wanted to escape immediately. To my surprise, the police officer caressed my head and even gave me a sweet. The German experience gave me something special, something which I never had felt before. There was a comfort, a certainty. This was a new chapter in my life. I got to know a new culture and a new country. What I especially recognized was that women had more option and higher social value. I learned German very quickly and began to translate for my parents. I took over much more responsibility within the family. I took care of, even for my younger siblings, I always took care of them and supported them in school. I managed to graduate academic high school while working part-time as well. All this was a big challenge, what made me into a fighter. The German economy was showing signs of decline at the time. I saw more opportunities in Switzerland. Although this was supposed to be the most important time in my career, I decided to move to Zurich. In Switzerland, I gained into a third culture. I had the chance to experience a new country, which at the end had a significant influence in my life. I began to study economics, work for one of the biggest Swiss banks, and find a little bit time for modeling, as modeling is my hobby. Modeling has given me pleasure because I could envisage my life as you see in the photography. I even had the opportunity to appear on German television. I had achieved all my goals, except one, the dream to become someday CEO of my own company. But at this point, I was pretty aware that I accepted too much for my life and my role as a woman in the financial industry. It looks like I had everything, but then why was so unsatisfied? I guess I had the feeling that I missed the other aspects of life. I didn't know if the person I really am or if I just tried to be somebody I never was. I knew my life had to change, but I didn't know how. When I look back at my life, I realized that I actually didn't have a youth. I was brought up in a very conservative way. I was trained to be very focused, especially regarding the needs of my family and society. I lived between two very different cultures. I got involved quickly in a relationship after moving out of my parents' house. I never had the feeling of being in control of my own life, because I needed to make all my decisions in acceptation of my family, tradition, and additionally my boyfriend. I felt caught in a system, and I had certainty, but I never felt the feeling of freedom. I had a feeling of unhappiness, and I wanted to look out for myself. I was willing to go out of the matrix. I gave everything up and decided to start a world trip, alone as a backpacker from one side of the world to the other, far away from my past. I traveled 1 year with only 15 kilograms suitcase around the world. I started in Australia, continued traveling to New Zealand, Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, America, and so on. During a world trip, you often don't know where you will be the next day. There is always only a short term from 1 week to the other. I decided to work for a banana farm in a city which is called Atherton in the Outback of Australia. I got paid $20 per hour and had an unforgettable and instructive experience. As you learn how to adapt in these environments, you build the confidence that you can handle everything. For example, did you know how you can escape from a crocodile? In running in a zigzag way, because a crocodile can see only straight ahead. Quickly, I got to know many people from all over the world. With a friend I met, we bought a car, we traveled through Outback. Slowly, I began to feel the freedom to worry about nothing and nobody, no demands, and not to be forced and judged by social pressure. I didn't pursue goals, I just took life as it came. My horizon increased while I experienced other ways of thinking, new cultures and cross-continental systems. For example, in Europe for decades people speak about legalization of marijuana, while in Bali magic mushrooms were legal and everywhere available on the streets and even in the restaurants. I was able to speak with many people about my life and reflect. The more I traveled, the more I realized and thought about my life back home. I became to be more self-confident and awakened thoughts and ideas that I always wanted to do. I found peace inside me. It was the best time in my life. My world trip started with enormous uncertainty, but ended very blissfully. With uncertainty comes new opportunities. The feeling of freedom is greater. You start to understand people better, and that makes your life easier for the rest of your days. Once I returned to Zurich, I realized I had changed a lot. I needed to restart my life from scratch. What made me to fall into depression and almost regretted having given up everything. However, after a settling period of few months, I started to work for a fund of hedge fund pioneer in Zurich. I met there some great people who understand my perspective in life, who had drive, intelligence, and were highly educated. One day I had an idea to create my own company, a spin-off of our previous employer. I partnered with 2 colleagues, and together we are a dream team. Everyone thought that we were insane. There even were some bets against us, but we believed in our conviction and used Skënderbeg's courage to drive our dream forward. We started our company firstly without client, just with an idea, drive, motivation, excellent setup, and a good feeling with some highly profile prospects. There were uncertainties, but you will never realize your dreams until you have tried it. My dream, which I thought was impossible, came true. After only 3 months, we've got seed capital of multi-million in our fund. A feeling which I simply can't understand or describe. My first thought was, it is always worth to fight in life. It is very interesting that all countries that are dear to me are represented in our company. The Chief Investment Officer is a Swiss, the Chief Risk Manager is a German, and I, as the CEO, come from Kosovo. Each nationality has its strengths, and by putting those strengths together, we became a strong team. That makes sense because Skënderbeg's approach was, if you take one stick and you try to break it, that's going to be quite easy. If you take 2 sticks, it's going to be more difficult to break it. And if you take 3 sticks or even more, it's almost impossible to break it. Do you remember my question at the very beginning? Does uncertainty have multiple faces? The answer is simply yes, because forced uncertainty was a terrible experience, while voluntary uncertainty was always blissful. Only one thing makes a dream impossible: the fear of failure. Thank you very much.